Welcome, Degens, to another edition of the Degen Docs. That is right, another live episode here, and it's a special episode, folks. Look, we are less than 30 days away from the NFL season, from NFL kickoff, less than a month away. So we've got training camp news, we've got injuries, we've got depth chart position battles, all of this craziness going on every single day. So we need to make sure we stay informed, and that's exactly what we're gonna do today. We are gonna start with some NFL training camp injury updates, and then we're gonna talk about some position battles. We're talking, maybe we'll talk the Bears running backs, Dolphins running backs, guys fighting up and down the depth chart, and figure out what you should do with them, both from the fantasy football perspective and from the sports betting perspective. All right, without further ado, we're about to get into it. The Position Battles edition of the Degen Docs on the Sports Gaming Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code SGPN Doc, all caps, one words, to claim your first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPN Doc. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL picks and projections are now live. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, folks, I'm your host, the OG Degen Doc, myself, and of course, I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my brother in degeneracy, Mr. Derek Bennett, Professor Locks himself. How are we doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing okay, but, bro.
Yes.
Have you been watching the Olympics?
Yes, I have been watching the Paris Olympics. Absolutely. What are you talking about?
So I have been I really don't even know how to say this, but like the pole vaulter dude.
Okay.
I mean,
all right. We're starting off real hot.
That guy. I think he was from France.
Yes,
he
was pole vaulter.
He was up there. He had a nice long pole, ran down the lane thing, stuck his pole in the ground, got up in the air, smacked his pole right off the hurdle thing. I don't even know what they call it in pole vaulting, but every time I've seen that video, I think of you.
Me?
You.
Why? Now I'm really confused.
Well, for the listeners, Sebastian and I went to school together.
Okay.
In PT school, we went and met in Pittsburgh, and I believe for the first probably 2 years that I knew this guy, at least one of his favorite words had something to do with male genitalia. Just pick the term, pick the phrase.
Wow, that's how we're starting this episode off. Okay, folks.
It had to do something. There was a male genitalia term thrown into a lot of conversations where it wasn't needed. Yes, I've been watching the Olympics, and they have reminded me of you.
Jesus. Okay. For those that aren't aware, look, type in French pole vaulter. You'll know what we're talking about. There's a gentleman, obviously a great athlete. He was going for the pole vault. He was almost over it. And due to being well-endowed individual, homeboy did not make it. His junk got caught on the pole.
He was this close. This close.
Jesus. Okay. All right. We are going to get kicked off the air in about 2 seconds. So let's move on. But yes, Paris Olympics have been fun. Talking about a little more wholesome. How about the other football? Our women's soccer in the gold match game took down Germany, took down Japan. The mighty Spain defending champions have fallen. We are playing Brazil this Saturday in the Gold Cup game. So listen, I love football more than anybody, but right now, not quite there yet. We're going to be talking a lot of the NFL, but hey, definitely support the U.S. women's there Saturday gold medal match against Brazil. I believe it's like 9 a.m. Eastern or whatever. I'm going to be we usually do these on Thursdays. Reason why it's Wednesdays because I'm going to be in the middle of the woods, hoping that I can get connection to watch that game there. Which, shout out to all the individuals, particularly males, but maybe females, that we know the NFL season is right around the corner, right? Less than 3 days from NFL kickoff, I believe 29, 28 days at this point. So now is the time where we must sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen. We must do what the spouse wants to do for these weekends, because we know for the next, up until February,
basically
it is
5
all
months.
football all the time. So I know I have roped myself into going to a EDM music festival, and I'm a guy who likes whiskey and country music. So pray for me for that one.
Hey, best of luck this weekend.
All right, did you catch the Hall of Fame game?
Bits and pieces. I saw our captain, Sergeant Bajent, take a few drives to start the game.
He
but
really
to
didn't
be
look
honest,
that good.
he really didn't. Sadly, I mean,
I expected a lot more.
after what was his quote? Working his face off, or
grinding his absolute face off.
Yes, grinding his absolute face off. Yeah, I mean, in general, it's hard to get into the Hall of Fame game. Like I'm from Ohio. I've been to Canton multiple times, been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame multiple times. Never been to the Hall of Fame game, mostly because you don't know anybody that's playing in the game 95% of the time. Like you'll get the second, maybe third stringers play.
Yeah.
Second stringers play a couple series, third stringers play the rest of the half, and then it's like guys trying to make the roster.
Yeah. No, it's definitely tough. You're not really getting much because they get that extra play preseason game. There's not a lot of guys who are really contesting for playing time.
Right.
Maybe to make the squad, but not really be impactful. Definitely not in the fantasy space or anything like that.
No.
I will say, what do you think about the new kickoff? This is something that, being an avid spring football lover, I saw a lot in the XFL. Now I will say, so the XFL did it where they're having them, so for those who haven't seen, definitely check it out. Essentially, the kicker is back at the normal kicking spot, and then you have the two teams 10 yards apart. You have to kick it between the 20 and the end line. And then as soon as the returner touches the ball, then the play is live. So it's almost like a structured running play it's less like a kickoff, but at least we're going to have more returns. I will say, the UFL and the USFL took the approach of, instead of that, they just moved the normal kickoff back a few yards to ensure like touchbacks were really almost impossible. So that was a lot more exciting, a lot more like real football. This is a bit simulated, a bit awkward, but it's what we got for this season.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it'll be interesting moving forward. Once you get those guys that are absolute burners back there, because there were a couple returns. There were definitely a lot more returns than we're used to seeing in an NFL game.
Oh yeah.
But you could definitely see when you get one of those 4-3-2 guys back there. If they get a little hole, ya.
Yeah.
No, there's definitely potential for those big splash plays.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it'll be an actual football play instead of a touchback, and I think we got to start there. I understand, the truthers that say, "Hey, we're getting further and further away from real football." I mean, it's the truth. We are, right? But it's what we got to deal with. A lot like the transfer portal in college football, like we just got to deal with it. It's still football. We're still going to break it down. We're still going to watch it. We're still going to love it. We're still going to bet on it. So. All right, folks, let's get into what we actually came to talk about. We are going to be first breaking down training camp news. And what I mean by that is, of course, we're two healthcare professionals. So where we feel like we have a unique edge is we spend our entire lives basically and daily lives working with injuries. So let's talk some of these injuries, some things that, are potentially going to affect the season, whether from the team standpoint or a fantasy perspective. So we're going to start going through those here. We're going to start with, one of the more unfortunate ones, and that is wide receiver Rondale Moore for the Atlanta Falcons. Unfortunately carted off the field with an air cast. So really, hard to be optimistic, just kind of praying for that young man's really quality of life at this point, that it's not like an Alex Smith situation. Is there any way that he plays this season? I know it's still early, but what are you thinking as far as reading that, Rondale?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly haven't seen a ton on it. It's really hard to really be able to tell by them just strapping up that air cast, right? So this could be anything from, a major multi-ligament tear. This could be some sort of really funky, fracture where it's completely displaced. Something, there's a number of things that it could be. it's hard to say, like you said, that there's a likelihood of him producing, at least, for the foreseeable future and first half of the season, probably first 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the season. Does he make a return if they're, in that playoff hunt, depending on the injury potential?
Yeah.
Or potentially, but it's kind of really up in the air until we get more. More info.
I mean, with Aircast, you immediately think fracture. Just, is it a compound fracture? Is it a stable fracture? Right. That's kind of your questions. They rushed him to a hospital, so that tells me there's concern for an unstable fracture. Whether the artery or the vein and nerve is involved. Something that could be a bit more permanent. That's why we want to rush him to the hospital. So definitely, really overall takeaway. Prayers up for Rondale Moore. Hope he is okay, but hard to imagine. Definitely not someone, if you were thinking of grabbing, that you should be grabbing in fantasy right now.
Sure.
All right, going to the defensive side, because we talk real football here. That means we talk all 11 guys on the field. Talking about one of your favorite teams, the Baltimore Ratbirds, as you call them, or your Baltimore Ravens. Cornerback Arthur Millette, he was getting the start, at least on the depth chart, starting spot in the nickelback. He picked up a knee injury that's going to require a knee scope. One of those situations where originally Harbaugh was basically saying, hey, it's not season ending, but he's going to miss some time. So it's like, all right, buddy, that's like, you're leaving about 5 months of a window of what we're talking about.
Right.
Now we kind of have a better idea, they're going to go in there and kind of clean some things up. Typically, could be 2 to 3-ish months. He's going to miss some time. I guess, 6 weeks, I would say, is probably best case. So what's your read as far as, are you agreeing there? Potentially maybe after week 4-ish, somewhere around there, week 4 to 8.
For sure. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Usually this is like a 6 to 8 week kind of a thing. Sometimes it's prolonged depending on exactly what they had to do, or, kind of how things progress over those first few weeks. Am I terribly concerned knowing that he's a Baltimore Raven? No. But yeah, I mean, for them, it'll be interesting to see who fills that hole for them in the nickel spot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it seems like every damn year the Ravens have so many injuries.
And it seems like it's all in training camp, like first 3-4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean, David Ajabo couldn't get on the damn field because it happened 2 years in a row. Like, it's just all over for them. And, hopefully,
Achilles and ACL. It's been crazy.
Yep. So hopefully, never want to risk injury. Hope that they can at least field a healthy team this year. I know you may not feel the same way as a Steelers fan, but hey. All right, the big one for today.
Yeah.
Josh Downs. So we're going to be going through position battles. So the teams put out their first unofficial depth chart, right? Take that with a grain of salt. I think for most teams, I know like the Broncos, for example, put all their rookies at the end of the depth chart just because, right? Maybe it's a seniority thing to make them prove themselves, whatever. So definitely take it with a grain of salt. But Josh Downs had been impressing in camp. He was listed as the wide receiver 2 opposite Michael Pittman.
Yep.
Now, he went down. He was carted off as well, not putting a lot of weight on it. Unfortunate incident. He got tackled during a 7-on-7 period where they're really supposed to be just wrapping up, not taken to the ground. Shane Steichen was pretty pissed about it. But he did avoid a fracture, which is good. That's 2 to 3 months. Picked up a high ankle sprain, though. Where are you at with the high ankle sprain? I think it's better than a fracture, but what can we expect? For sure.
No, this is usually like that 4 to 6 weeks kind of a thing, right?
And that's the expected. That's what the team has given out around that 4 to 6 weeks. So that would
ideally this would have happened a week or two ago, like right at the beginning of training camp. So that way he's kind of trending towards that week 1-2-ish range. But this is probably going to be a little bit, first couple weeks. If he's on the field, he's not going to be necessarily back into football shape. Like he's missing valuable time here in training camp, getting ready for the season. So even if he is on the game day roster week 1, week 2, I don't expect him to do a whole lot right out of the gate. But Josh Downs is a dude. I think this wouldn't necessarily stop me from drafting him if he's around that spot, because most likely he'll be fine after that first 3-4 week mark. But yeah, I think it is something to watch over the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, for me, it's a situation where we talk about expected recovery of the timeline 4 to 6 weeks, but
Mm-hmm.
high ankles are tough, and
They are.
they're tougher during the year. But
Yep.
I like guys to get closer to that 8-week mark where I really feel comfortable with starting them. They're starting to look better.
Sure.
Now, I do think he's going to be out there closer to that 4 to 6 week mark, whether it's week 1 or week 2, week 3, whatever. But I'm not feeling comfortable enough to roll him out there in my fantasy lineups week 1, even if he is
Oh yeah.
starting, right? No,
Definitely.
regardless of if he's active or not, I don't care, right?
Definitely.
Now, from a draft perspective, best ball, just ADP, things like that. I really like Josh Downs. I'm pretty high on the Colts offense. That's been well documented. But it just depends right now how big of a dip he takes. If there's a bunch of fear mongering and people are like completely avoid him and he drops below, some guys, like if he goes after AD Mitchell or something like that, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now you can talk me into it. If his ADP really doesn't move or, no one's really scared off of it, that probably is going to be lean to me taking less of Josh Downs than I had been taking. I just do think it's going to take him the first 4 weeks or so to get back into being that dynamic wide receiver that I feel like I can trust throwing in my lineup, trust betting behind, just because they're a tough injury, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you're right, definitely
and
not.
No, and I completely agree with you there. If he's around his ADP, I'm probably still waiting another round, see if he drops, another 8, 10, 12 picks. But at the end of the day, sometimes, depending on who else I already have in my wide receiver room, if I take a wide receiver first two picks, and he's like a wide receiver 3 kind of a thing or a flex option, I still may go Josh Downs because, like you said, I am also high on the Colts offense, and I really like him as a player. So
yeah, no, definitely do not hate that at all. All right, we're gonna start breezing through a couple of these here.
Yep.
Mike Williams, Jets wide receiver, coming off an ACL tear. He was activated off the PUP today. Now, he's got, this is a guy that we've both talked about kind of being a little bit higher on, and which doesn't always happen, especially guys coming year 1 off an ACL tear. But he's got 11 and a half months from the injury to week 1. The Jets have talked about how they're going to keep him on that Breece Hall-like injury timeline where they're going to snap count first 4 weeks and then kind of let him loose, right? So I think this is matching up really well for Mike Williams to kind of hit that. His numbers are low. His ADP is low. I know I'm a little bit higher on him. I took his over 4.5 season prop. What's your read here on Mike Williams?
Yeah, no, I think it's something to be optimistic about, right? I think, this is a little bit sooner than what they were expecting him to be activated off the PUP list. And, with the move over to the Jets, I think with Aaron Rodgers there, with Garrett Wilson there, it'll be interesting. I'm still kind of up in the air whether to fully trust Mike Williams.
It's hard
with his injury history coming off the ACL,
yeah.
and like we've said many times in the past, that first year after the ACL, especially for running backs and wide receivers, is always going to be a question because you're still trying to learn your movements again. You're still trying to figure out how to trust that knee again. So I think, is he the second best wide receiver on the roster? Yes. Will Allen Lazard push him for that wide receiver 2 position? Potentially, at least in the first part of the season.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, logically, you're right. I fade these guys all the time. For me, 11 and a half months, closer to that 1 year mark, positive sign. Bigger guy, you're right. Doesn't rely as much on his lateral speed, lateral agility, right? Aaron Rodgers likes big targets in the red zone. I just think he gets some potential touchdown passes. I think is where he makes it up. But you're correct, man. It's tough to get in on someone year 1 post ACL, but sometimes just got to take one of these and that's it, man. You just got to send it. So I am out on Mike Williams. All right, we're going to breeze through a couple minor injuries. I'm going to just kind of read them off real quick. I want you to let me know if you have any concern for any of these guys, because these are big names, but from everything we've heard so far, sounds pretty minor. So starting in Baltimore, Rashad Bateman, shoulder injury. It looks like he landed on his shoulder, maybe an AC grade 1 sprain, something like that, something minor. Any concerns there?
Nope, not much.
Still 30 days out. We're good there. All right, Christian McCaffrey. obviously a big one, right? Picked up a mild calf strain. Now he's dealt with some calf injuries in the past. Typically 1 to 2 week recovery timeline. During the season, I'm a lot more concerned due to the re-injury risk. But a month plus, they've already said he's not going to play in preseason. How much was he going to fucking play in preseason anyway?
Right.
Any concern here with Christian McCaffrey?
Nope. Christian McCaffrey's a dog as a running back and dog mentally. He'll be fine.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that is part of it, though. I saw Stephania Bell talking about it. Like, there's a little bit of how much do guys really prepare their body? There's differences, right? They talk about the LeBron James example of spending millions of dollars on his body, right? Like, at any aspect of life, there's just individuals at any level who are simply more bought in. Yep. And they're going to do everything right. We tell our patients to do things all the time. And you can tell right away, some people, I have soldiers all the time. I tell them one thing, and they look at you with these glazed eyes, and that motherfucker is not going to do what we said. Yeah.
I did all of this stuff. Yeah.
But then you got other people who are buying in, who are, asking you questions, being engaged. And I think Christian McCaffrey has shown he is kind of the model patient in that way. I think we can have some trust there. So that's a good
Completely
point.
Agree.
All right. Xavier Legette, rookie for Carolina, who we may talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of an injury scare with a foot injury, negative x-ray and MRI. They were looking to see if there was a fracture. Called it a bone bruise. They obviously didn't say what bone it was, but somewhere in the foot. Any injury concerns there?
Injury concerns, no. More concerns that he's missing reps with Bryce Young.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, anytime a rookie misses reps in training camp, I mean, it's a big deal, right? Yep. We talked about it with Roman Wilson. We talked about it with Jonathan Brooks. Like, it's a big deal, right? Yep. It's not college football anymore. So I know there are some guys who can absolutely translate right away, a la my boy Malik Neighbors and potentially Marvin Harrison. But, rookies need reps, man. Rookie needs reps. Bryce Young needs reps with the guys he's going to be thrown to.
For sure.
All right, last one for the offense, and I'm going to rattle off, go through some bigger stuff on defensive side. Puka Nacua picked up a knee injury, was originally some concern, fell on the knee. People was it a PCL strain, yada, yada. McVay came out and said, hey, look, it's a bursa irritation thing under the patella. He landed on it. It hurts. Not anything expected. They called him week to week, which was interesting. But, for all expectations there's no real concerns for week 1. How concerned are you?
Minimally, really, to be honest with you. I think with a guy like Puka Nacua, or Nacua, excuse me, whatever his name is, they're going to be super cautious with his recovery timeline. If he doesn't, play a snap in the preseason, whether he has a knee injury or not,
who cares?
It is what it is.
Same quarterback, who cares?
Yep.
Who cares, right?
Yep.
So I agree, but this stuff does affect your betting market, right? So I gave out earlier on an episode, hey, Cooper Kupp to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns, 45-1. I looked at that bet today as I was looking it over, talking to somebody about it. It's at 35-1. I think that's directly correlated to people are starting to get in on Cooper Kupp because of this Puka Nacua thing. Now, for someone who's been on Cooper Kupp and liked getting him later at ADP, it's annoying because, this is a situation where I think if you are in on Kupp like myself, you wait a little bit because Nacua is going to be back in a couple weeks. He's going to be just fine. All the little, fantasy people are going to be hype around Puka Nacua again, and then we can get Cooper Kupp at a discount. So this stuff does kind of matter in the markets. Absolutely. All right. Let's talk about a couple of defensive guys who suffered some big injuries and then a couple O linemen, and then we'll get to position battles here. So first, cornerback Emmanuel Mosley suffered a grade 3 pec tear, full tear of his pec. It does require surgery, about a 2 to 3 month recovery window. Chance for a late return, a situation where we're talking about a team that drafted 2 cornerbacks in their first 2 picks, right? They're obviously wanted to address the cornerback room, the secondary in general. They brought in Carlton Davis. How concerned are we that we're probably going to have to throw at least 1, if not 2 rookies out, maybe a little bit sooner than we wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily concerned for Emmanuel Mosley. I think he'll be probably pretty good when he comes back. But for the Lions, it'll be interesting, like you said, starting a couple rookies most likely for the first, 6, 8, 10 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a chance. Yeah, I mean, it could be 8, could be 10, it could be 12, 14.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be at least probably the first half to 2/3. So, I think as we've talked about before with these like upper extremity injuries, like around the shoulder, around the chest area, like if this is a quarterback, I'm super concerned. Corner.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
I agree. When he comes back, not concerned. It's just he's got to miss some time, right? So this is more concerning from a team aspect of, hey, Terrion Arnold and a Nick. Oh, geez, I'm gonna mess up his name. Missouri cornerback. Get ready to step up because you got to play. So another guy that's a little bit more straightforward, BJ Ojulari, from the Arizona Cardinals, edge rusher, ACL tear, out for the season. Not a whole lot to talk about other than I've talked about how bad this Cardinals defense looks on paper and how bad I imagine them to be. BJ Ojulari was second in the team in sacks last year as a rookie. He was actually one of the few bright spots on that defense. He's out for the season. Listen, this doesn't change my perspective on the Cardinals fantasy-wise. I like Kyler Murray to hit his overpassing touchdowns. I'm in on Trey McBride, right? I think Marvin Harrison Jr., I know you're a bigger fan than I am, but I do not. I think this might even help their offense because they're going to have to score a ton of points, not just for our fantasy teams, but for them to be in the games. But, it's a significant injury. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback and you have a shaky secondary, I know they got Budda Baker back there, but there's not a lot of star power on that back end. This is a tough one for a team that was, maybe they can surprise some people, but that defense, man, it's already pretty bad, and losing Ojulari is going to be tough.
For sure.
Last thing we'll talk about, and then we're going to get into these position battles. Rams O-line. I know I am somebody who was higher on the Rams than you were. I saw the writing on the wall, and look at San Francisco now. No, I mean, at this point, Brandon Ayuk has not been traded to your Pittsburgh Steelers yet. And my wife's. That's why I have all this stuff in case you're like, why are you saying your? Yeah. So, but anyway, so the Rams, they've got 3 starting linemen who are week to week. Now, there is a chance that all of these guys could be back before week 1. However, there's a chance they could all be missing week 1 too. So this is concerning for me. It's a new group. They really should be building up chemistry. I'm huge with O-line chemistry when it comes to building in new pieces. So you have Rob Harvenstein and Alaric Jackson, both your starting tackles, out with ankle injuries week to week. Not a ton of information, but something likely grade 2 low ankle or mild high ankle, right? So when it's week to week, it's usually closer to 3, 4, 5 than 1 to 2, typically in the week to week. The other guy is Jonah Jackson, who has a bruised scapula, one of the weirdest diagnoses I've ever heard. That's one of those where it's telephone game and people just start making stuff up because that doesn't mean anything to me. But 4 to 6 weeks was his expected recovery timeline. So all these guys may be taking it up to week 1. How concerned are you with the Rams at this point with 3 offensive linemen, on the mend here?
Basically, this just supports my take that the Rams cannot stay healthy. With this being said, I think I mentioned Matt Stafford having some injury issues in the past as well.
You're right. Yep. You're right.
I am not super high on the Rams, and this is partially why.
Yeah. Right now, your take's looking pretty good. If you can go back to the the NFC West episode and look at our disagreements on the 49ers and the Rams there. I admittedly been higher on the Rams. Still not off of them.
Most likely, with my luck, all 3 of them will start. Stafford will throw for 450 yards. Cooper Kupp will have 3 touchdowns.
We'll see, man. We'll see. Still a lot to figure out. That's why we're talking about it 30 days away. But it is getting close. I am getting a little nervous for that Rams O-line. That's a great point with Stafford, man. If he's got protection, he looks like an elite quarterback. He cannot create his own room at this point in his career, right? You don't want him running around. The more we can build a solid pocket for Matthew Stafford, the better off we're going to be. So with those 3 Rams linemen on the mend week to week, definitely one to watch for. One I'm going to be paying close attention to see if I take them. I believe they played Detroit week 1. And I know Jonah Jackson wants to get back to that for that game to play his old team.
For sure.
All right, folks, that is your training camp news. And we are about to get into position battles for the NFL. We're talking fantasy football, sports betting. We're talking all these rooms. Got a lot to figure out what's going on. Before we do that, let me tell you about some of the things going on here at the Sports Gambling Podcast. They launched their 32 NFL team previews. That is the flagship show, Sports Gambling Podcast. And as a bonus for each team preview, they're including a code word. So if you listen to all 32 team previews, get those 32 code word phrase. And if you enter, and you're the first to enter, you could be the lucky winner who gets a $500 NFL circa future bet. Listen, not like a regular company, not just going to give you $500. That's lame. What if you spend it on something dumb like groceries or something like that? Come on now. We wanted to put it directly on a future bet. Put it on your best bet to, win the division. Maybe you agree with us. You take the Jets plus 190 to win the AFC East. Maybe you go for the long shot and, hey, I want to pick, the Lions or some team to win the Super Bowl. Do whatever the hell you want with it. But, hey, listen to those previews. Get that code word in, and a $500 ticket is yours. So subscribe wherever you get podcasts to the SGPN app. Obviously, great place to also check out our podcast. All right, let's get on into it. So we are going to be getting into these position battles here. So the way this is going to work, obviously, we're going to bring it up, talk about each team, and kind of go a little bit from the fantasy perspective and a little bit from the sports betting. Probably more fantasy as far as talking ADPs, who we like, what do we don't like as far as that goes. So let me stop tripping up over my words and let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's start with the running back room. We've got Zach Moss coming in at RB 26, and we got the young guy, second-year player Chase Brown out of Illinois coming in at RB 38. So I will let you start, my friend. Who are you taking at those ADPs and why?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably lean Zach Moss mostly because he's been there, he's done that. He's basically a 3-down back that when he had that starting role in Indy, like he showed he could be a dude, right?
Yep.
I know Chase Brown, I've heard that they really like him down in Cincy. Very explosive. He's a big play threat. He kind of reminds me of like a poor man's Austin Eckler kind of a setup. So, it's really kind of hard to say that he's not going to get very many carries because he is that boomer bust kind of a guy. But just for consistency, I'm going Zach Moss every day.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely going to agree. Zach Moss. I was in on him last year when Jonathan Taylor was going through whatever the hell Jonathan Taylor was going through with the contract and the fake injury and all that jazz, right? This man, when he was the RB1 for the Colts, 4 games, 445 rush yards in 4 games, right? Now, am I expecting that right off the bat? No, but I do think he's going to do enough to be the RB1 for the Cincinnati Bengals for the entire season. Yes, I think Chase Brown is going to be worked in. Yes, Chase Brown presents as a fun, dynamic option, especially out of the backfield. But I think Zach Moss is the workhorse. Coming from Utah, he knows how to tote the rock. I mean, I think the market is just off on him. I already took his over 775 in the rushing yards. I think we were both on that. Can still get that at plus 100. I think he's going way too far. RB 26, this is telling me that most people do not see Zach Moss as a true RB1. I do. Right. So I think if you can get a RB1 for a good team who's going to be in the red zone and going to pick up some touchdowns just by association, I think that's way too low. So I will agree with you 100%. Give me Zach Moss over Chase Brown.
Yeah. And with second to that, with the Bengals, obviously they have a high powered passing game with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Higgins, all those dudes. They're going to have to pick up on the running game a little bit. I think going into when Joe Burrow was injured last year, they were the most pass happy team in the NFL. I don't see that being the same exactly. I think they're still going to throw the ball, but I think Zach Moss is going to get his carries.
Yeah. And again, for what it's worth, Zach Moss listed as RB1 over Chase Brown on that unofficial first step chart. I'm going to mention those again. I talked about it. Take it with a grain of salt, right? Things are going to change. We're 30 days out, but it does give you a little insight. Potentially a little insight. Obviously, for some teams, it means a little bit more than others. All right. We're going to stick with the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to talk about their tight end / wide receiver 3, right? Cincinnati, you've got Jamar Chase, and you've got T. Higgins. Option 1, option 2. Case closed. Don't have to worry about that. But that option 3 in the passing game, who is that going to be, right? So we've got Jermaine Burton, wide receiver 73. You've got Andre. Yes, I have no idea. Man, I ain't even going to say that. Yeah, Andre Iosivas, wide receiver 106. Charlie Jones, wide receiver 133. The guy who's actually listed as wide receiver 3 over Jermaine Burton right now, Trent Irwin. I don't even think he's like on the list. Trenton Irwin, Mr. Crocodile Hunter himself. Yep. And then for the tight end position as well, you got Mike Gesicki at tight end 28. Drew Sample is actually listed as tight end 1 right now on that unofficial depth chart. So what are you making of this situation? If you had to pick one guy to be the third option for the Cincinnati Bengals passing attack, who are you taking?
Based on their ADPs, I would probably go Gesicki, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Like, he's not being drafted a lot, right? And I think just by association, just getting on the field, he's going to get some targets. You know, I think with the Bengals offense, I would not be surprised if Iosivas and Burton and Irwin kind of just cycle through. That's kind of what they've been doing. I think so.
That sounded way better than it sounded on mine, so let's roll with it.
But anyways, the Iosivas and Irwin kind of just traded places a lot. You know, they kind of shared snaps a lot last year. I would not be surprised if Burton just kind of falls into that. Now, coming out of Alabama, you know, he's a fairly highly touted dude that had some other issues coming into the draft. Could he make some splash plays and kind of own that role potentially? But I just don't see the volume leaving those first two dudes. Yeah. And Gesicki's going to be on the field as tight end 1. So
yeah,
I would probably go Gesicki.
I agree with you. I you know, this is one I'm still open based on what I see out of training camp. I haven't heard a lot out of Jermaine Burton from training camp. Again, how much are we putting in Trent Irwin being listed above him at wide receiver 3? You know, that's kind of concerning. It's Trent Irwin. You know, I like the guy's flow, but what are we doing? Mike Gesicki, though, I would agree. He's the guy I'm looking for. Drew Sample, I'm hoping this is one of those, like, just smokescreen things. I know Gesicki's been dealing with a little bit of a minor injury, so I don't know if it's just that or what. But as long as Gesicki can get back on the field here within the next week or so, and he starts getting those first-team reps like he should, I mean, he in Miami, he was not bad, right?
No, not at all.
The Bengals like to use the tight end, whether it's Joe Burrow or, you know, Browning last year.
Yeah.
Tanner Hudson was playable, at least in the sports betting market. I hit Tanner Hudson on his all over yards multiple times. They like the tight end. And Mike Gesicki's not a bad tight end. So, like you mentioned, tight end 28 right now, basically going undrafted in most leagues. As a last pick in the draft, I'm not mad at myself and walk away with Mike Gesicki.
Definitely.
All right. Moving down, taking our talents to South Beach. We are talking about none other than the Miami Dolphins running backs. So let's start here. This is going to be a controversial one. I already can tell. You got Devon Achane, running back number 9, going very early in drafts. Yep. I've seen him going in the first round multiple times on Underdog. And Raheem Mostert around RB 23. What are you thinking here?
You know what? I'm actually going to let you start off with this one.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the kind assist here. Yeah, it's Raheem Mostert for me. You know, we talked about the AFC East. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody if you were listening to that episode. You know, this situation, I think it plays out very similar to the Detroit situation with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep.
Every fantasy person and every fantasy whatever analyst in the world can say, look at Jahmyr Gibbs and look at Devon Achane and say, wow, they are so much more explosive. Look at those 70-yard runs. They should be playing every single snap. You know who does not think like that? Dan Campbell does not think like that. And, geez, no, I just totally blanked. What's oh, God. What's his name? Oh, God. Well, I'm just picturing glasses and like him talking about Starbucks and vaping.
McDaniels?
McDaniels. Mike McDaniels?
Mike McDaniels.
Jesus. Wow. I need it. Clearly, I need more of this.
Dan Campbell doesn't think that like that either, though. To be fair.
What is it? Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Both these head coaches, they like their running backs that get 5 yards and a cloud of dust. They like their workhorses. Yeah. So I'm in on David Montgomery, just like I'm in Raheem Mostert. Now, people are going to tell me, hey, he's a bit older in his career. The guy didn't play much early in his career, right? So he doesn't have those typical miles. He's not a Derrick Henry who's been getting 400 plus touches every year. He's somebody who is a little bit more fresher, although he's older in age, because he did not get utilized a lot early on his career. He had a great year last year, and I think he's going to have a solid year this year. RB23, again, is just way too soon. I do think this Miami offense can sustain two, RB2s essentially, two RB, RB2 and RB3, whatever. I think Devon Achane is going way too high. I think people are thinking he's just going to be on the field every snap, which is unrealistic in my opinion. And yeah, give me Mostert at RB23.
I would tend to agree with you based on their ADPs alone. Just a couple other things that you didn't touch on, because I'm going to basically co-sign basically everything that you said. But Achane, I think, averaged like 7.5, almost 8 yards a carry. That's not sustainable. He had 100 carries. He had 7.5 yards a carry. There's no way you're doing that with 200, 300 carries throughout an NFL season. There's just no way. Mostert had, I think, 200 and some carries last year, almost 20 touchdowns. Like, he's their goal line dude, much more than Achane. So when it comes to inside the 10, Mostert is going to be the guy on the field most likely. And like you said, I think Mostert is just, or at least was that dude last year. I mean, he had 18. He's so consistent. He had over 200 carries, 18 touchdowns, and he was a 1,000-yard back. And going back to your point with McDaniels, like, even when he was in San Fran before getting the job in Miami, like, I believe Christian McCaffrey was not there yet, or if he was, it was like at the season before.
Yeah, I don't think Miami. He was. But yeah,
they had that 2-3 back system before McCaffrey got there, right? So I think McDaniels doesn't mind having a couple guys to spell each other. I think they're going to split carries. RB9's just too valuable, or that second round draft pick is just too valuable to use on a guy that's probably going to be splitting carries throughout the year. Even if he ends up, averaging 5 yards a carry.
Yeah.
He may only get 150 carries. It's just hard to say.
That's a great point. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're spending way too much draft capital there. And it's for a guy who hasn't shown he can stay healthy yet, right? Played 11 games, only played like half the season. He did get almost less than half of the carries that Mostert get, just by a little smidge. And then I expected these numbers in the passing game to be a little bit more crazy, but Achane only had about 20 more yards receiving than Mostert did. So it's not like he's getting now, I think we all remember some of the bigger plays he had, some of those long touchdowns he had.
For sure. Well, and at the end of the day, like, yes, Achane was out for a little bit last year, but it was only 4 games. Like, it wasn't like he was out 8-10 weeks and he had all of the, like, just barely missing these stats with a comparison to Mostert. Like, they basically were on the field.
He only played 11 last year.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Mostert was out for 2 or 3 as well, though.
Mostert,
right?
yeah. So Mostert only played 4 more games than he did. So you're right in that regard. It's not like it was a huge discrepancy. So that's fair. All right, let's move on here. We're gonna go from South Beach up to Minnesota. We're gonna talk about some quarterbacks. Let's talk about some quarterbacks. And I'll let you go first. How do you see this playing out? We're not talking ADPs because you're either taking one of these guys or you're taking none of these guys, and you're probably taking none of these guys. But Sam Darnold basically versus JJ McCarthy. I mean, they've got Nick Mullins, and do they still have Jaron Hall? Looks like that's Jaron Hall there. They do. But let's just talk McCarthy and Darnold, for the sake here. Who do you think starts week 1? When do you think JJ takes over, if he does?
Darnold definitely starts week 1. McCarthy, I think he's a great athlete. When it comes to manning an offense, that starting role, he's not ready. I don't think, even coming out of Michigan, like, he was asked to do very little for the Wolverines, even in a national championship run. So there's been all kinds of talk in Minnesota that the dude's skipping balls to wide receivers. He's airmailing dudes left and right. Like, who knows what JJ McCarthy's going to be? But right now, I don't like any of these dudes, and Sam Darnold's probably in the lead at this point. So I'm going to say Sam Darnold starts week 1. I don't really like Minnesota much to do much of anything this year, to be honest with you. So come week 5, week 6, if they are, 1-5, 2-4 or something, I think they probably make the switch.
Throw the rookie out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to see what he can do, because he is athletic. He can move around. He does have some wheels, but man, yeah. I feel sorry for Justin Jefferson.
Well, your timeline must be different than mine. Being the Ohio State guy that you are, I'm sure you're getting a lot of the JJ McCarthy lowlights. I have a bit of a different take. Now, obviously, I did give out JJ McCarthy to start week 1. It's now 4-1. You can get that price there. I think that's worth a stab, and here's why. The biggest thing is we spent this time talking about JJ McCarthy, but let's talk about Sam Darnold, the guy who went from, this high-round draft pick to seeing ghosts, and now he's on his 4th team. And the last time he started a season, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns 2 seasons in a row. I think that you just lost Kirk Cousins, your franchise guy. You went up into the 10 slot. You traded up to get JJ McCarthy as a top 10 draft pick. He was their guy. I did not see anybody else in that range really going for JJ McCarthy. I mean, the question was JJ
There's a reason McCarthy for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, hey, listen, didn't know if this guy was going to be a first-round draft pick. I didn't think he should be, but they went up and got him at number 10. So that tells me they really like what they're seeing, what they saw out of this guy. I think JJ McCarthy has a shot to start week 1, and if he does not, I think he definitely is starting by week 6. I think they have a bye week 6, and then week 7 he gets to start, because they have a pretty tough start. They start with my New York Football Giants, and I think they play like the Packers. They play the Niners. All right, relax. But I do think JJ McCarthy has a shot to play, and it's more because think about it from a fan perspective, right? Kevin O'Connell, I think this is just his 3rd year in a team that's been up and down. They've definitely not overachieved at this point in his tenure. They lost to my Giants, 2 seasons ago at home in the playoffs. They went down pretty poorly last season. So there might be a little bit of pressure there. Some fans, I would much rather see my top 10 first-round pick quarterback than Sam fucking Darnold thrown out there week 1. So we'll see, though. I mean, hey, right now, Sam Darnold is in the lead on the depth charts. He's the betting favorite to start week 1. So there's a good chance we don't see McCarthy until week 7.
What would you say the likelihood of Sam Darnold starting those first 4, 5, 6 weeks? JJ McCarthy coming in there, manning that offense, throwing two picks in his first game, throwing 3 touchdowns over the first 4, and 8 picks. And then they switch back to Sam Darnold again.
I don't think, first of all, if you're going to switch to the kid, you can't go back to Sam Darnold. You have to be like Bryce Young didn't get benched. Let's just put that in perspective. Like, you cannot, once you make the switch to the rookie, you got to stick with the rookie, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying I think JJ McCarthy is going to be great. That's not what I'm saying. I think he's got a decent shot to start because he's going against Sam Darnold. Sure. That is the entire argument. I thought JJ McCarthy should have stayed another year and, developed his skills a little bit more. But right now, JJ McCarthy can make throws that Sam Darnold cannot, particularly on the run. I do agree with you. Can he operate an offense?
Third row of the stands. Yes, he can.
All right, we're moving on because this Ohio State hater is not taking it. But you have a fair point. Listen, Darnold is the betting favorite for a reason. I think it's worth a dart throw on JJ McCarthy. I think the fans can rally behind him. All right, before we move on, let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy. That is right. They just launched their Underdog Streaks, where if you hit your first 2 pick'em entries and then go streaking, close on, people, then you can go ahead and go on an 11-0 run, and you can win 1,000x. 1,000, that is right, 1,000x. Best Ball Mania is live with 15 million prizes. Last week, we did a Best Ball Mania 5 live draft. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already. What a great time. Hey, look, and we can get you $250 for free right now. All you got to do, if you don't use Underdog Fantasy, it is a lot of fun. I encourage you to do it. Not only do they have NFL things, they also just started their college football best ball. What an awesome time for that. I mean, that's got to be a crazy draft. I haven't done one yet because I'm like, you got to know so many players from so many different teams that you could be getting the number one wide receiver for every team, the number one running back, the number one quarterback. There are so many teams that a college football best ball is got to be just insane. So that's pretty exciting. They're the first that I know of platform to launch that. So make sure you use promo code SGPN Doc to claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's underdogfantasy.com, promo code SGPN Doc. Listen, folks, it is super simple. You download it, you put in the promo code SGPN Doc, deposit $250, boom, automatically on the spot. Your account says $500. We just gave you 10 free entries in Best Ball Mania 5 for your shot at $1.5 million to first place, $15 million in prizes. Go ahead, sir.
They don't have a chance for 1.5 because we already drafted. We're gonna win that one.
That's true. You're right.
Whatever second place is, you have a
second
chance.
Place. I'm sure. I think it's like $500,000. So $500,000.
It's still pretty good. It's still pretty good.
Not gonna be mad about winning $500,000, right? For a 20-minute draft. All right. We're gonna also tell you about Game Time. That is right. So Game Time is a really cool site because it's built for people who procrastinate. Now, yeah, exactly. That's probably most of us. I know if you asked my wife, she would definitely say that this is definitely me. So sometimes, I don't know what to do. Whether it's date night, you got the in-laws coming into town, you got your buddy called you up like, hey man, I'm going through some shit. You want to hang out, right? Why don't I go up on Game Time, look for some last minute tickets, whether it's to a baseball game, they had it to spring football, concerts, whatever it is. They're your spot, Game Time. And of course, use that promo code SGPN, and that'll get you $20 off your first deposit.
Ooh,
so Game Time, promo code SGPN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So definitely head on over to Game Time and get your tickets there. Hey, NFL season's coming up, right? So, as much as you want to plan, shit happens. Maybe you had a tough week and you're like, you know what? I want to see the New York Football Giants go stomp out JJ McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. Head on over to Game Time, use promo code SGPN, and get your $20 off today. All right, let's keep this train rolling. About halfway through these position battles here, and spit up on my computer screen there. Sammy the sprinkler. All right, moving on. We're talking about the Denver. That's what happens to the ad reads, man. It's just too much me talking. I need to get you in here. Denver Broncos quarterback situation. We just went talking about Minnesota Vikings. Now we're talking about Denver. You got Bo Nix. You got the MILF Hunter himself and Zach Wilson. And you got Sean Payton's lover boy in Jarrett Stidham. Who are you going with?
To start week one or to finish the season? What are we talking?
This one's pretty open, man. We can go week one for sure. Talk there, but how do you see this team? Like, maybe not. We don't have to go whole team, but like, who do you think is going to be the guy?
This is kind of a funny one too, because kind of like you were saying with JJ McCarthy, like Denver wanted Bo Nix for whatever reason, right? Yep. And I think it's an interesting situation here because Bo Nix was in college for like 18 years. Like he started college when he was like 7 years old.
Think back to when Bo Nix was a freshman and think about what you were doing in your life. Does that feel like
that was like pre-pandemic? Like we were probably still.
We were in Pittsburgh. I remember watching Bo Nix drive down against, was it Texas early on in his career? But I remember watching him at Cowboys right after a Steelers or a Pitt game like 5 years ago, man. Like
really?
Dude, you're right. But continue. Sorry, I didn't mean
the dude's been in college forever. Like, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what he does as a rookie quarterback because he is a stud as an older quarterback. Like he's one of the like. Rewind time 20 years and this is what like the norm was, right? These guys are coming into the NFL playing 40-50 games. This is Bo Nix. So I think he's got a leg up on a lot of the rookie quarterbacks from that standpoint.
Yeah.
I think Jarrett Stidham probably starts week 1, week 2, but I would not be surprised if they make the switch over to Bo Nix very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, right now that's a hot take in the betting market. Now, I also gave out the pick of Jarrett Stidham plus 650. He was when we talked about it a couple weeks ago to start week 1. Right now in that unofficial depth chart, he was listed as quarterback 1. However, if you go over to ESPN, the starter is listed as Bo Nix, and he's listed as quarterback 2. So honestly, who the hell knows? I mean, I'm pretty sure Sean Payton even said, like, we didn't really put any thought into the depth chart. Like, Jarrett Stidham is technically the starter right now.
Yeah, in week 1 of training camp, I was looking into this actually, and it sounded like all 3 dudes were like taking turns, taking reps with first string. That's been reduced. Zach Wilson's been booted to the curb already. Who would have guessed that one? And now Stidham and Bo Nix are kind of sharing those snaps. So I think this is one that we will definitely learn a lot from game time come preseason games.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think, like you were saying, I think Sean Payton likes both of those dudes for whatever reason a shit ton. Like before anybody, Sean Payton brought Jarrett Stidham
first day of free agency last year.
He was his number 1 guy to get in free agency. So like, if that doesn't tell you anything, he also booted Russ Wilson to the curb as well.
He tried to exile Russ Wilson so bad.
Exactly.
You sure you're not injured, Russ? Are you sure you're okay, man?
Exactly. So it's really interesting the love triangle of Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, that's why I think he was worth the dart throw, and I still think he's worth the dart throw. I haven't looked at the price in a little while, but plus 650 is when I got him at. I think it's a lot closer than people think. I think everyone's expecting Bo Nix to be the starter. He is the odds-on betting favorite. I think he was like minus 500 or something, if I'm not mistaken. But I think it's a lot closer. Zach Wilson, I don't think has a chance in hell. Just look at what Zach Wilson has done in the NFL the last, I mean, insane how he's going to be like AJ McCarron, who just is around until he's 30 just because he threw that one nice ball at fucking his pro day against Air. Right. Exactly I think the dart throw is worth it on Jarrett Stidham. I do think Bo Nix is the more talented cornerback. I do think he's the guy who does play the majority of the season and does start. I think he's the guy who gives them the best chance to win. I also think Sean Payton is a weird guy, and he has this love of kind of affection for Jarrett Stidham. Again, first day of free agency opened. Sean Payton went out of his way to bring in Jarrett Stidham despite having Russell Wilson, and he pushed Russell Wilson out to play Jarrett Stidham. So to think that he wouldn't start Jarrett Stidham for the first couple weeks, to say that he's given the rookie time to learn behind the quarterback, not the craziest thing in the world, in my opinion. Nope. That's how I see it in Denver. And now we're going to head over to Carolina to talk about some running backs and potentially some wide receivers. Why don't we start with the running backs there? Why don't you start? Obviously, you got Jonathan Brooks coming off an ACL tear. Quick update on him. He's going to have around 10 months from his injury date to the start of the season. We've been well documented about talking about Jonathan Brooks, how we don't expect him to start week 1 and just hit the ground running. Anterior cruciate ligament, major injury, requires season-ending surgery that he had last year, and he's a rookie running back not getting these reps. It's a big deal. Now, the update I wanted to provide before you give your take, no preseason work, which was expected per Dave Canales. Likely to start the year on the pup. And, week 3 or 4 would be like a good case scenario in terms of Dave Canales' eyes. Does this change your thought on Jonathan Brooks? Is this more of what we were thinking? Where are you at with that?
I think it's pretty much in line with what we were thinking. I think in general, like we've said many times, ACL tears, especially with running backs and wide receivers, take some time for them to get back into the swing of things, right? And, especially with them coming out and basically saying that he's going to start the year on the PUP list, I'm very much fading Jonathan Brooks, at least for the first half. I think come week 5, week 6, once the season really gets rolling, once he might be on the active roster for a week or 2, really hasn't done much, maybe I throw a dart and see if somebody wants to basically give him to me in a trade. But I'm not drafting him, especially at RB29. I'm waiting a couple extra rounds and taking Chuba Hubbard if he's still there. I'm just not super high on Jonathan Brooks.
Nope, absolutely agree with you. This is not a situation where I'm saying Jonathan Brooks is a bad player. Jonathan Brooks is not going to have a good career. No, it's not that. Jonathan Brooks looks like an electric running back. He looks like he could be likely the best running back out of this draft class. Just not this season. Not 10 months off an ACL tear, right? Jonathan Brooks, I don't see him doing much of anything the first half of the season. I think he's going to be very, even if he is active week 4, I think he's going to be very much on a snap count. And I like Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard was a guy who almost got 1,000 yards and over 200 carries last year on a very bad team. I think.
And with that being said, sorry to interrupt, but I really do think Carolina takes a little bit of a step offensively this year. They bring in some offensive line help. They bring in some wide receiver help. Bryce Young has another year under Dave Canales. So I think Chuba Hubbard probably is not the box isn't going to be full with defenders this year as it was last year.
Last year, man, they were a run heavy team and he still was able to make things work. So Hubbard coming in at RB 44 as compared to Jonathan Brooks going to RB 29. Just see that as way, way off. I think they should almost be inverse flipped, and that would make a lot more sense to me. I do think at least for the first half of the year, you're getting an RB1 for free. I don't see 44 running backs being better than Chuba Hubbard this season. So I think that's a gross misprice there. Now we'll quickly talk about these wide receivers. You got Deontay Johnson's wide receiver 43. Xavier Legette, the rookie who we talked about, picked up that minor foot injury, should be okay. Wide receiver 49. Adam Thielen, wide receiver 74. I quickly just want to mention in an unofficial depth chart they put out, Jonathan Mingo was wide receiver 3 over Xavier Legette. Mm-hmm. Again, how much can we take into that? I know there's been some buzz about Mingo, a guy who also was a pretty highly touted guy coming out of Ole Miss. So is in his second year, is he going to be ready to make a move? I mean, you can basically get him for free. So, what major takeaways from the wide receiver room in Carolina?
Deontay Johnson going as wide receiver 43, not surprised from a Steelers fan. But honestly, of those 3, I'm leaning Thielen, at his ADP just because he's been in Carolina. He knows Bryce Young and he's a reception machine.
Yeah. Listen, as much as I and my wife hated on Deontay Johnson on the Steelers because despite catching over 100 balls all the time, he drops the most crucial passes all the time. Yep. I just think wide receiver 43 for a wide receiver 1 on offense is too low. I do, it's going to hurt pressing that button to draft Deontay Johnson, but wide receiver 43 is kind of ridiculous for the talent that he is. He might not know who his head coach is and who he has dinner with, but Deontay Johnson is still a solid receiver in the NFL. Sure. So I feel like I'm almost having to say this through like gritted teeth, but Deontay Johnson actually would be the guy I would actually be targeting.
Yeah, I and that's probably just me and my fandom just completely fading Deontay Johnson.
It happens.
Like you said, as a wide receiver 1, I would probably take him. But I'm not. I do really like Thielen at 74, to be honest with you. I think
I'm not pounding the table for Deontay Johnson though. He's not. I'm way more high on like Chuba Hubbard at his price than Deontay Johnson.
I think Thielen was like a top 10 receiver through like the first 6 or 8 weeks, though. I mean, last year, but then they figured out, Adam Thielen's the only guy that they could throw to, and then defenses just took him away. So. Yeah. I don't think that's going to be the option. I don't think that's going to be the same this year.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you got the, Mingo, the rookie Legette, and Deontay Johnson, nobody's going to think about the old white guy. So Thielen might be open. It might not be a bad strategy. All right, folks, we just got 3 more battles to break down. But before we do that, let me tell you about another couple of our wonderful, wonderful sponsors there. Let's talk about Rhythm. Look, folks. Football season is here, and the college football and NFL models are now live over on Rhythm. Create your own betting model or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. You decide what stats matter most to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around that. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. You can just use their favorite picks, their best bets. They use projections from MIT data scientists. We've all seen the movie 21 here. Those MIT guys, they're smart. Rhythm already has you covered for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0, less than a month away for both of them. Week 0 is what, like 3 weeks away, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. I can't wait for football. But Rhythm, claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, enough about talking about something neither of your hosts really have in Rhythm. We're talking about Circus Sports now. We know how to sports gamble. We love Circus Sports, so this one should be a little bit easier. Circus Sports is back with Circus Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Imagine the regret you feel. Here's the situation, folks. You offer your office survivor pool, right? Your cubicle mate, Jim, Billy, Kim, whatever the hell their name is, you probably don't remember. They say, hey, you want to join the office survivor pool? Sure, why not? Throw $20. Damn. You go 17-0. You crush it. No one, half the survivor pool doesn't even make their picks. They don't know what the hell's going on. No one understands the glory of you just going 17-0. Why don't you just enter Circa $1,000 for the chance to win $10 million? No one's going to forget that fucking story. So make sure you enter Circa. And if you don't have a book trip to Vegas yet, head on out for August 22nd to the 24th. It is ultimate sign-up weekend. They've got open bars. Our hosts, our bosses, Ryan and Sean, are going to be out there. They got free drinks. We've got a hotel discount you can use. Promo code SGPN15, save 15% on your hotel for sign-up weekend. So sign up in person between now and September 7th. Circa Sports, so Circa Survivor, obviously, Survivor contest. Circa Millions is an against the spread type contest. I believe it's $6 million grand prize there. And then if you want to sign up in person, if you don't live in Las Vegas, you can use a proxy. We have a deal with the proxy, proxyfootballcontest.com to save you $50. Use promo code SGP. All that will be in the show description links because I know I somewhat butchered that. But we move on. And we are moving on to the final phase of the show here. What do you got?
Hey. Did you mention, you just mentioned Sean and Ryan. I'm really wanting like some of those like buttons that they have, like that, you know, they just start playing random sounds and music. I really just want to start playing the Rocky theme song.
The Rocky theme song?
Yeah, because we're going to be talking about the New York Football Giants wide receivers, and Malik Neighbors is out just throwing haymakers this past week.
Okay. I've legitimately.
He's taking on the whole fucking team, dude.
You're right.
How smart is that? As a rookie wide receiver, let's take on the whole fucking team.
Derek and I have been friends for a long time. I legitimately have no idea where the hell he's going with things half the time, but I get what you're saying. Malik Neighbors, yes, not only is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but clearly he's trying to join Fight Club. If you didn't see it, joint practice between the Detroit Lions and New York Football Giants. He was torching them DBs all day. Kirby Joseph, the same player who took out TJ Hawkinson's ACL and Tyler Higbee's ACL, was starting to mess with him. You know, I think Neighbors gave him a little shove to the face, and Kirby Joseph just started throwing. I never understand why guys throw punches at people with pads and helmets on. You are going to do more damage to yourself than that other player. But hey, I get it. Guys being dudes, we're all kind of jacked up for football, so let's fight each other. But let's talk about my football Giants here. Let's talk about this wide receiver position. We got Malik Neighbors coming in at wide receiver 26. I think he's really the only one you could say is definitely going to be on the field the entire fucking time. Wan'Dale Robinson slated at wide receiver number 2 right now, wide receiver 78. And then you got Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver 86, and Darius Slayton, wide receiver 93. Per the depth chart they put out, it's really a fight for wide receiver 3. They had Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton listed as co-starters. So right now, that's where things fall. Who are you targeting? Give me somebody other than, I think Malik Neighbors is skyrocketing up. So as much as I love him, and I gave him out as, to lead rookies in receiving yards at plus 600, that bet is now down to plus 500. I still like it at 5-1 because I think it has a very good chance of hitting. As good of a player as Marvin Harrison Jr. is, Malik Neighbors is the guy for this New York Football Giants offense. He's the guy. And Daniel Jones was targeting him all training camp because he's so fucking open all the time, right? I love Wan'Dale. I love Jalen Hyatt. I love Darius Slayton. They can't sniff this man's jockstrap. Like Malik Neighbors, I'm telling you, I've not been excited for a guy. So he's rising up the ADP. I don't think we need to talk about him. I think he's a stud. Give me either Robinson, Hyatt, or Slayton. One of those three. Are you taking a stab at any of them?
Well, one, Malik Neighbors is beating who in the Giants secondary?
Listen, all right. I know him and Deonta Banks, young player out of Maryland, great cornerback. And he was torching the Detroit Lions secondary as well. I know Terry and Arnold got a little bit of Malik Neighbors, obviously Kirby Joseph. So I understand the Lions secondary is not their strongest point, but if you're wide open, you're wide open. Dude.
Second, back to your original question. I would probably lean Slayton just because he's kind of been that dude for the Giants over the last 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, he's led the team in receptions, the last 2 years?
He's been the leading receiver for the last 3 seasons. Let me double check. I believe it is 3 seasons because this is my guy for sure who I'm targeting. Obviously, I want to get Neighbors. If you can't always get Neighbors just because he's starting to go super high, right? It's starting to get a little bit crazy. Obviously someone I was getting a lot of early on, but not now. But yeah, so probably not 3 seasons, the past 2 seasons. He had over 740 yards to each of the last so he had over 700 yards the last 2 seasons. He also had it his first 2 seasons. So he's been a very consistent wide receiver for them.
Yep. And that's where, once we get back into those wide receiver 2 through, not necessarily like high end 2s, but like low end 2s, early 3s, like, and honestly, I consider all 3 of these guys kind of in that range. Like none of them are necessarily 2s in my opinion, but they're high end 3s, I guess you could say. I think he's super consistent from a wide receiver standpoint. He's been there in New York the longest of the 3, I believe. And he's just one that you can trust compared to the other 2. Hyatt, he's a burner, but he's not going to be that week in, week out starter. And Wan'Dale Robinson, I honestly just don't know as much about him as you do. I just like Slayton, mostly because of his consistency.
Yeah, we got Chad Parsons coming in here. Shout out to Chad. Cheers to you, Chad. Was on his show a little while ago. Always love to talk to a fellow Army guy. He's saying Slayton has eroded so much in recent seasons. Hyatt was pretty horrible as a rookie, and then Robinson by default. I definitely can see the argument, but Slayton is the guy I will be targeting. I like Wan'Dale though. I don't hate that. Wan'Dale Robinson is a shifty guy. I just think that him and Neighbors are they're gonna be kind of asked to do a little bit of the same things. I think Slayton is that consistent guy on the outside. He's a deep threat. So he's played for the Giants for 4 seasons. He's went over 700 yards in 4 of those seasons. He had 4 touchdowns last week. He had last season, 8 touchdowns as a rookie. I just think he's the guy you can get for free. Wide receiver 93 right now. I like leaving my drafts with the last pick, Darius Slayton, but you can talk me into Wan'Dale Robinson at 78. I mean, all these guys other than Neighbors are basically pretty free, right? Yeah, so to think that Wan'Dale is going to take the step forward, he was coming off that ACL tear last year. He is an electric guy within his own right, and he is probably set in that wide receiver 2 role, right? So, maybe Slayton does lose a couple reps to Jalen Hyatt. I want to be in on Jalen Hyatt. I just haven't seen it from him. All I saw from him in Tennessee was just running the 9 and running that go route. So he gives me a little bit of pause there. That's like a one guy I'm probably definitely not touching. You could convince me in a Wan'Dale, but I do like Darius Slayton and where he's going. I'm willing to take the shot there because he's someone who's just been forgotten about. He's getting more and more forgotten about, and I do think he ultimately is the 3rd wide receiver for that team. And I think he's a guy who Daniel Jones has shown can get him the ball down the field. So if they're going to be throwing the ball down the field a little bit more, I definitely don't mind Darius Slayton there as well. Other guy I want to quickly mention is Theo Johnson out of Penn State, rookie. He's going around tight end 33 right now. again, super, super free. He's going to be the Giants tight end number 1. Danny Bellinger, Belly is a great blocking tight end. You know, he works hard. He does good things. He's nowhere near the receiving threat that Theo Johnson is coming out of Penn State. So give me, if you're looking for somebody to take as last pick dart throw, either Darius Slayton or Theo Johnson, I think guys that could potentially outperform their ADP. Absolutely. So those are the two for the New York Giants. Anything else for the Giants? Or are we moving on?
Let's get off this trash team and move up to Green Bay.
All right. Enough fun, I guess. Now we're talking about we could probably say a real wide receiver competition here.
Yeah.
So we got Christian Watson going wide receiver 41, Jaden Reed, wide receiver 31, Romeo Doubs, wide receiver 53, and Dontavius Wicks, wide receiver 67. Obviously, these ADPs can be a little bit changing and different, but that kind of gives you an idea of where these guys are going. Who do you like and why?
I would probably lean Watson. Actually, I think he's the one dude that is like he's your prototypical number 1 wide receiver. Like, I think the thing that's mainly kept him on the sidelines is obviously injuries, and obviously they figured out his injury.
Such a joke. Okay.
Hey, big hamstring differences that could cause an injury. Who would have thought? But no, I think he's probably, like I say, he's probably that prototypical number 1 guy. Jaden Reed,
he's fun.
I think he's a fun dude. I think he, I don't know. He's just going a little bit higher than what I would necessarily put him. I would probably switch their ADPs, to be honest with you. The other 2 guys, if they're on the waiver wire, I'm definitely picking them up, if I'm needing a dude, but I'm probably staying away from Dobbs and Wicks just because neither of them are going to be super consistent.
Yeah. I mean, we've agreed a lot. I think this is one we're going to differ on. I'm not a Christian Watson guy. I don't fall into the camp that, look, we've talked about it, but asymmetries between muscle types is the most elementary strength and conditioning principle there is as far as injury prediction. So this is not any novel type thing. It's honestly shameful that it took the Packers and Christian Watson this long to figure out that if your hamstring strengths, or if you have that big of a deficit between the two, you're going to run into injuries. But the number 1 predictor, the number 1 risk factor for an injury is a previous injury to that body part. Mm-hmm. Christian Watson has done that a lot to his hamstrings. So I don't think they're going to be able to just rub this magic and say, oh, look, there's symmetry between his muscles and he's going to be good to go. I'm a bit more pessimistic there. Romeo Doubs is the guy for me who I'm targeting. Really? He was the second leading receiver for them last year, but he led them in targets. He had 96 targets. Jaden Reed had a bit more receptions and about 100 more yards receiving. However, they tied for 8 touchdowns. I think Jaden Reed, maybe going a little bit high, but he has some potential in the running game where he had 3 touchdowns on the ground. So I don't hate that. But I think Romeo Doubs, where he's going, I think he's definitely going to be a starting wide receiver for this team. I like Romeo Doubs. I know he's not the sexy pick by any stretch of the imagination. He's kind of the forgotten guy. And maybe that's where I kind of like to fall myself into, because I think you get value there when you're not having somebody who's in headlines. But Romeo Doubs for me is the one. I do think these guys all cannibalize each other a little bit. I don't think this is a situation where one guy super exceeds, expectations to the point that you have an alpha wide receiver and then you've got the other guys. I think it is going to be a situation similar to past season where, it's a lot of guys around 700, 800 yards.
No, I completely agree with there being 3-4 dudes like basically every week that could go off. I'm probably staying away from all of them, but I still think Watson's probably the guy I would go with, mostly based on his big play.
Yeah, he's got the highest ceiling.
He's got the highest ceiling. I think going back to last year, he played 9 games. He had 5 touchdowns. I think he only averaged like 46, 47 yards. But if we're looking at targets per game, he's right around that Dobbs number. If I do my math quickly, which I'm not great with math, so I don't know if that's
leave it to the MIT
not,
rhythm nerds, man.
Exactly.
That's not
Exactly.
we're science. We don't do
True.
math, man.
That's true.
We don't
but
do
yeah,
math.
I think they cannibalize each other at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right. We got one more position battle, and we're heading over to Cleveland to talk about the Browns backfield. Now, I will say as we wrap up here, if you guys have any questions, we talked about training camp news, some injury stuff. If you got anything, definitely is now your time to get your comments in. Leave a comment, say, hey, I want to know about this guy, that guy, whatever. So get those in now, and let's get into the Cleveland running back situation. So we've got Nick Chubb. This is always funny to me. Nick Chubb is going the first running back drafted at RB35. Jerome Ford, RB39.
Crazy.
Deonta Foreman, who thankfully did not have a serious neck injury, back with the team. I don't know if he's quite practicing yet, but that's okay. He's expected to be okay, which is huge after he got immobilized and brought to the hospital. He's going around RB62. What's your takeaway from the Browns situation? Who you drafting and why?
I am definitely staying away from Nick Chubb, especially at RB35. Like we've talked about, he's coming back from a multi-ligament multi-ligament knee surgery that typically we want at least 12 months, if not a little bit longer, for that return. So even though he's doing crazy things in the weight room, I'm staying away from him. I don't see him doing much at all through the first half of the season. Jerome Ford is one that I actually had both of these guys. I had Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford on my team last year. Jerome Ford just gave me headaches most of the season last year.
Are you taking a dart throw on?
So by default, Foreman? I would probably actually lean Foreman. Honestly, I think he's just more explosive as a running back than Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford, I think, tries to.
You're really low on Ford, man. Go ahead.
I am. I think, and who knows how much that was the offensive line being beat up as well last year for the Browns. But yeah, Jerome Ford just did not impress me at all last year, being like that guy minus Kareem Hunt inside the 10. I think Jerome Ford is he's not good.
He's just a body.
He's just a body that he'll get you 50, 60 yards a game. He might get you in the end zone. But that's it. Like there's just nothing special there. So I'm probably passing over him. I may take a dart throw with Foreman.
Yeah, see, I'm going to go the other way. I am going to go, I do like Jerome Ford. He is someone I am drafting at RB39. And that number is just, but Nick Chubb is kind of shooting up and Jerome Ford is shooting down, right? Every squat video that Nick Chubb puts out, every workout video, his ADP gets higher. We talked about this in the AFC North preview. So if you want the full breakdown, go there. But the quick synopsis, squatting and ACL recovery really don't have a lot to do with each other, folks. No, squatting is a glute and hamstring dominant exercise. Your quadriceps are king when we talk about ACL rehab. So not super impressive for us, as a human and like as a strength conditioning thing in general. Squatting that much rate, really impressive. For ACL recovery specifically, he had, not only just ACL, but MCL and medial meniscus where he required 2 surgeries. Not super impressive for what we want to see. So, he's got 12 months of recovery timeline to week 1. Typically for these multi-ligament injuries, we want something closer to 12 to 15 months. So I do think it's a situation where I think if Nick Chubb comes back by the halfway point of the season, that's like a good case scenario, right? Definitely, sure. I think he's going to start on the PUP. I think he should start on the PUP, right? If you bring him back too soon, I think it's going to be hard. He's just going to be a shell of himself. So I do like Jerome Ford. I do think that, he did some things out of the backfield last year as far as he had 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, 5 touchdowns out of the backfield, 44 receptions and 300 yards. He had, only 4 touchdowns on the ground with 800 yards and 200 carries. I don't know if Deonta Foreman is going to be like Kareem Hunt, where he eats up all those red zone targets, goal line carries, I should say. But sure. I do think Jerome Ford behind a good offensive line is going to be able to outperform that RB39 number. I get it. I'm not I'm not in love with Ford as far as I need to get him. I need to walk out of my draft with this guy. But he is someone, if he falls to me, especially the way that things are trending, I will take Jerome Ford because I do think you're getting RB1 for at least 8 weeks.
Hey, you roll some of those stats off again. How many yards per game for Ford?
Yards per game?
Yep.
Well, he played all of them. So 47.8 yards per game on the ground.
Okay. So Foreman had 47.2.
And then he had 18.8 in the receiving realm.
Okay. Foreman is not the receiving threat. But anyways, back to rushing. How many touchdowns do you have?
He only had 4.
Oh, Deontay Foreman had 4, but only in 9 games. Okay, continue. Yards.
No, you're not. You're right. I mean, hey,
yards per rush.
Yards per rush. 4 yards.
3.9. They're the same dude, and I'm getting him 3 rounds later.
You know what? You're convincing me. That's honestly. That's not a bad way to play it. If you just want to walk away with Foreman and, for basically free money.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think they're basically the same dude. I think Foreman's a little bit more explosive, and that was behind an average Bears offensive line last year.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be running behind a stronger Browns offensive line. I hate to say that. But yeah, I think they are going to be kind of that 1-2 tandem. I think they share carries fairly evenly, especially in the first part of the year until somebody shows that they can be that guy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. You might honestly, I think I probably should be taking a little more Foreman there because of how free he is. And because you're right, it is an open opportunity. Jerome Ford has not established himself as an elite, or even a good running back in the NFL. So I do not hate that at all. All right, folks, before we wrap up, my one question to you as we leave, what are you doing if you wake up tomorrow and Brandon Ayuk is traded to the Cleveland Browns instead of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
It sucks for Brandon Ayuk.
That is a very muted response. I thought I was going to get out of you.
The Browns are the Browns at the end of the day. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, sucks that he has to live in Cleveland.
All right, and on that note, look, folks, as a new channel, we appreciate any likes, comments, subscribe. If you enjoyed this, especially if you've hung out with us for the hour and a half we've been talking football in the middle of August, definitely please follow us, subscribe, give us your feedback, comment what you think, what you like, what you don't like. Look, we're all getting ready for the season, right? We're going to be doing 2 shows live a week once we get into the regular season. For the rest of the offseason, it's going to be 1 live show a week until we get to week 1. I know we're both jacked up for football. You got anything to say to the people before we get on out of here?
Ooh, nope. Ooh, wait. Next week, what are we doing? Overvalued, undervalued, fantasy-wise?
Is that what it's? Yeah, I think that's what it is on the schedule.
Yeah, so we'll do some overvalued, undervalued. We'll probably touch on some of the same guys that we did today, but definitely a lot of new guys that we haven't talked about nearly as much in past episodes.
Yeah, so next week we're going to be doing, each going round by round, talking who's your sleeper pick, who's your overvalued pick for each round, and kind of going a little bit faster of a format that. So definitely follow us for the more daily up-to-date, kind of making sure you stay up-to-date with the NFL. Jeez, you can tell it's time to get out of here. I'm twisting over my words here. But all right, folks, from the Degen Docs, we appreciate you listening. Have a great week. You know what they say, folk. A lock a day keeps the bookie away. And the Degen Docs have your prescription. We are out of here. What's up, Degens? Doc here. As a proud member of the U.S. Army and a lover of football, sometimes those two things cross over on here. But as you probably already know, as a lowly captain, these are just my opinions. These are not opinions that are representative of the entire DoD or the U.S. Army. The same thing goes for any references to any commercial products or hyperlinks. Again, that does not constitute an endorsement from the DoD or the Army. I hope you enjoyed the show, and as always, let it ride, baby.